I opened my banking app at 6:47 a.m., still in my bathrobe, and saw 4 red zeros where my savings used to be. My coffee went cold in my hand. For a moment, I thought it was a glitch. Banks make mistakes, right? But my chest already knew the truth before my mind caught up. Someone I trusted had taken everything. My name is Margaret, and I'm 63 years old. I raised 3 children mostly on my own after my husband David passed away 12 years ago. He left me the house, a modest life insurance policy, and a work ethic that never quit. I picked up shifts at the hospital as a billing coordinator, clipped coupons, bought store brands, and slowly built a nest egg of about $87,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. My kids, Daniel, Sharon, and Lisa, all did well for themselves. Daniel married Vanessa, a real estate agent with expensive tastes. Sharon's husband, Craig, worked in finance and always wore cufflinks that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Lisa stayed single but lived in a trendy downtown loft that I helped her afford with a loan 3 years ago. A loan she never quite got around to repaying. Quiet suspicion at home, I thought I was doing everything right. I hosted Sunday dinners. I remembered every grandchild's birthday. When Vanessa complained about needing a bigger SUV, I quietly contributed $5,000 toward the down payment. When Craig's company had restructuring issues, I covered their mortgage for 2 months. Family helps family, that's what I believed. But over the past year, I started noticing things. The way they'd glance at each other when I mentioned saving for a trip to see my sister in Arizona. The way conversations would pause when I walked into the room during holiday gatherings. Sharon started asking pointed questions about my will, my accounts, where I kept important papers. Daniel joked more than once that I was sitting on a gold mine with the house fully paid off. I brushed it aside. They were stressed, I told myself. Modern life is expensive. They didn't mean anything by it. The Tuesday morning I saw those zeros, my hands started shaking. I scrolled through the transaction history, 5 wire transfers over 3 days, all marked authorized, draining $82,000 in total. The names on the transfers were my children's, every single one. I called the bank immediately. The representative was sympathetic but clear. The transactions had been processed with proper authorization codes. Someone with access to my accounts had initiated them. I felt my throat tighten. The only people who had that level of access were Daniel and Sharon. I'd added them years ago in case of emergency. My phone rang. It was Sharon. "Mom, hi, just checking in. How are you feeling today?" Her voice was bright, cheerful, normal. I hung up without. The first thing I did was change every password and revoke all account access. The second thing I did was sit very still in my kitchen and think. The grocery money in my checking account would last 2 weeks, maybe 3 if I was careful. My next paycheck wasn't for another 11 days. The mortgage was paid, thank God, but utilities, car insurance, and the prescription medications I needed, all of that suddenly felt impossibly heavy. I didn't call them back that day. Or the next. Daniel showed up on Thursday evening, letting himself in with his key like always. I was heating up soup, the cheap kind from a can, which I hadn't bought in years. "Mom, you okay?" Sharon said you hung up on her. I stirred the soup slowly. Did she? "Yeah, and you're not answering texts." He leaned against my counter, looking at his phone. "Listen, Vanessa and I wanted to ask if you'd chip in for Cody's birthday party. We're thinking of renting that bounce house place, and it's kind of pricey." I turned off the stove. "I'm not in a position to help right now, Daniel." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean? You always." "Check your bank account," I said quietly. "You'll see exactly what I mean." His expression shifted. just for a second, a flicker of something that looked like guilt before smoothing into confusion. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I think you know." He left without finishing the conversation. I locked the door behind him. Over the next week, my life became very small. I stopped going to my usual grocery store because I couldn't afford the brands I was used to. I started walking to work instead of driving to save gas. My coworker Jennifer noticed I was bringing leftovers that looked increasingly sparse and started sharing her lunch without making a big deal of it. I didn't tell her what happened. I couldn't, but I think she sensed something was wrong. Sharon came by on Sunday with a casserole. "Mom, this is getting ridiculous. Daniel told me you're acting really strange. Are you upset about something?" I accepted the casserole. I was hungry enough to set pride aside, but I didn't invite her in. "I'm just very tired, Sharon." "Well, you're worrying everyone. Lisa tried calling you 4 times yesterday." "I'm sure she did." Sharon's voice hardened slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at my daughter, my middle child, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the yard when she was 5, and realized I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. "It means I'm figuring some things out," I said. "Thank you for the food." I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about timing. Why now? Why so brazen? Why all 3 of them? At 2 a.m., I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I went through old emails looking for anything I'd missed, and I found it. 6 months ago, Lisa had forwarded me a link to an article about estate planning. I'd glanced at it and forgot. But in the email thread, there was a response from Sharon I'd never seen, apparently forwarded by accident. It said, "Mom's got way more than she lets on. Daniel saw statements when he helped with her taxes. If we time it right, we can access it before she does something stupid like donating it all to charity or wasting it on experiences." I read it 3 times. My own children planning this like a business transaction. But that email did something else. It reminded me of a detail I'd nearly forgotten. When David died, his brother Thomas had set up a separate trust account in both our names. Thomas handled all the legal work, and after he passed away 5 years ago, I'd honestly forgotten it existed. The statements went to his law firm's estate office, and I'd stored all those documents in a box in my attic, barely looking at them. The next morning, I took a personal day from work. I spent 4 hours in my attic, dusty and sweating, until I found the box labeled Thomas, Legal. Inside were statements for an account I hadn't touched in years. An investment account David and Thomas had set up with company stock options. After years of dividends and growth, it was worth $340,000. My children had emptied the accounts they knew about. They had no idea this one existed. I didn't make any sudden moves. Instead, I called Thomas's old law firm and spoke with the junior partner who'd taken over his estate cases. Her name was Rachel, and she listened to my story with the kind of calm that told me she'd heard worse. "Mrs. Harrison, you have several options here," she said. "But first, let's secure everything. Change all your passwords, get new account numbers, remove all secondary access. Then we need to discuss whether you want to pursue legal action." I thought about that, police reports, courtrooms, my children's names in legal documents. "I want to do this differently," I said. "I want to show them consequences, but I don't want to destroy them." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "That's very generous, given what they've done." "It's not generosity," I said. "It's strategy." Over the next 3 weeks, I worked with Rachel to restructure everything. The trust account was moved to a new institution with my name only. I set up a living will that specified exact amounts, Fair, but not extravagant for each child, but only if certain conditions were met. And I made sure every document was signed, notarized, and legally airtight. Meanwhile, I lived like I was broke. I let them see me struggling. Daniel's wife, Vanessa, made a comment at the grocery store about my sad little cart of generic items. Sharon started mentioning senior housing options in conversations. Lisa stopped calling entirely. I also quietly reached out to my sister in Arizona and told her everything. She was furious, but I asked her to wait. "I need you to trust me on this," I said. "Margaret, they stole from you." "I know, and they're about to learn what that actually costs." The confrontation came at Daniel's house during what was supposed to be a family dinner. I'd been invited, more like summoned, to discuss my financial situation. They were staging an intervention. All three of my children sat in Daniel's living room. Vanessa had made appetizers. It would have been almost funny if it wasn't so sad. "Mom, we're worried about you," Sharon began. "You're clearly struggling with money management. We've talked, and we think it's time you consider selling the house. You could move into something smaller, and we could help manage your finances." "Manage them," I repeated. "You know what she means," Daniel said. "Make sure you're taken care of." I looked at Lisa. "You've been quiet, nothing to add." She had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We just want to help, Mom." I set my purse on the coffee table and pulled out a folder. Rachel had prepared it for me, nice and neat. "Let's talk about help," I said. "3 weeks ago, you emptied my accounts, $82,000. You did it in stages, probably hoping I wouldn't notice right away. You used access I gave you for emergencies to steal from your own mother." The room went very quiet. "Mom, that's not," Sharon started. "I have the transaction records," I interrupted. "I also have the email where you discussed your plan, so let's not pretend." Daniel's face went red. "We were going to pay you back, we just needed." "You needed to believe I was helpless," I said. "You needed me to be the struggling widow so you could swoop in and take control. But here's what you didn't know." I opened the folder and showed them the trust account statements. "Your father and your Uncle Thomas made sure I'd be taken care of. This account has $340,000. You didn't know about it because it wasn't any of your business. And now, it never will be." I handed each of them a copy of my new will. "You'll each receive $15,000 when I pass, enough to cover funeral expenses and a small inheritance. The rest is going to charity and your children's education funds, which you can't touch. And if any of you contest this will or try anything else, you get nothing." Vanessa stood up. "You can't do this." "Actually, I can. It's my money. And my lawyer made very sure it's all legal." I left Daniel's house and drove home in silence. My hands were steady on the wheel. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just tired. Tired and done. The next morning, Sharon called, crying, "Mom, please,